Hey everyone, this is OCD Live. I'm Ali Grayman, and let's get to some questions. So the first question I have is, I have a hard time establishing if my obsessive thoughts are from depression or OCD. And this is actually a question I get often. Basically, the clients are worried, what if it's not OCD? What if it's something else? And it's a very, very common worry. Now, I find that the person can also almost become like obsessive about that worry and trying to figure it out, and that in itself can become an obsession, right? So if you are, just like with anything else, just like with a regular OCD thought, if you are doubting it, if it gives you anxiety, like is this OCD or is this depression, if it follows those same patterns, treat it like an OCD thought. So just because this type of thought is specifically actually about OCD, it doesn't make a difference. Your mind is focused on anything that you're viewing as dangerous. So if you're viewing this as dangerous, it's going to send you more of these thoughts, and it's not going to be any different than harm OCD or, I don't know, religious OCD or cheating OCD or whatever. It's going to be the same thing in terms of the level of anxiety and in terms of the need to solve and to search and to figure it out. So just treat it like OCD. To be honest, with all of my clients, I have never seen actual clinical depression. It's people get depressed because it's a depressing situation, but it's not the same thing as having a clinical depression. As again, I'm not an expert on depression. I don't claim to be, but this kind of depression goes away when you get over OCD. So it's not like so depression is not the right word for it. Do you know what I mean? Because when we're saying depression, we mean actual clinical depression. This is just feeling bad because you're in the position that you have to deal and recover from OCD, and anybody would feel bad in that situation. So it's a little bit different. But again, I don't want to give you reassurance, because it's the more you try to solve it and the more you try to figure it out, the worse you will feel about the situation and the further you will feel like you need to go. So you really need to quit doing this stuff in order to feel better. And as you let go of the emotions, just like with the other types of OCD, it will start to make sense that it is only OCD. But I mean, I don't know you personally, but it's based on just my experience. I've never had a client who had depression on top of having OCD, so I don't think it's very likely. And I've had a lot of clients who had obsessive thoughts about whether it's OCD or not. So those are just the experiences that I had. So the next question I have is, hi Ali, I have tendency to compare my OCD thoughts to others. How can I prevent myself from doing so? And a lot of people have this tendency because, you want to kind of figure out if your thoughts are any different. Because really at its core, you want to figure out if your thought is true or not. So you want to figure out if the situation is real or if it's just OCD. And this is the problem, that the more you try to figure it out, the more your brain views this situation as important. And again, I'm going to do a little bit of a recap right now, and to those people who listen to my show all the time, this will be like old news, but it's actually good to hear it because it's very important to continue repeatedly hear this information so it gets into your subconscious. That this is how OCD works, and it's very basic, okay? When you get a thought of what if something, 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 doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what it has to do with. If you're viewing this thought with fear, so you start to get tensed up, your anxiety goes up, everything, right? The first time you get this thought, right? Your brain takes notice. The job of the part of the brain that's causing OCD is to take notice of situations that scare you. And the reason why it's doing that is because it wants you to react to situations that scare you, because you need to protect yourself from situations that scare you in normal, regular life, right? It's not wired for OCD, and it's not wired to view these thoughts on a conscious, moral, whatever level. It's just wired, like that part of the brain is just wired to view it as Are you getting anxiety? Are you paying attention to the thought? Yes, send you more. No, don't send you more. That is the basic function of that part of the brain. It cannot do more. It doesn't understand the thought. It doesn't understand what the thought is about. It just understands that this particular thought you are reacting to. And because you're reacting to it, it will send it to you again. So the more you're reacting with fear, the more thoughts of similar nature you're going to get. And it will kind of like vary them a little bit. So it will go from like within the same parameter, or it will have one thought, but details of first you're worried about this detail, then you're worried about that detail, so something like that, right? But whenever you compare the OCD thoughts, what you're actually doing is you're reacting with fear as you are comparing them, because you're trying to solve it in that panic fear mode, and brain sees that, and in turn views this thought as being more valid because you are doing that, because it's not wired for OCD or any other kind of like a disorder, right? It's only wired for actual protection of the body, like making sure that you are safe in case, like it's a primitive part of the brain. It's not really meant for kind of figuring out or anything like that. And that's why we can't talk directly to that part of the brain. We can't. You can kind of talk to it, but you can't impact it directly by saying, "Stop sending me these thoughts." You have to prove to it that it's not dangerous by not reacting. So, and when you're comparing, when you're going over this thought in any way, because say if you have, for example, harm OCD thoughts, right? And you're comparing it, analyzing it, going over it in any way, what you're actually doing is you're telling your brain that this thought is important. And because it's not a true situation, it's not a real situation, there's no reason for you to think about this. Do you know what I mean? So because but you are thinking about it. So the reason why you're thinking about it, right? Like this is how the brain is viewing it. That the brain is viewing it. Okay, the person is thinking about it. This means the thought is important. I will send more of this thought. So in order to stop the thoughts from happening, you need to stop reacting. You need to stop telling your mind, because what you're doing right now is you're basically saying that black is white and white is black to your mind. You're saying this thought that is not true is actually true because I'm paying a lot of attention to it, you know? Because say, for example, if I gave you some random thought, you wouldn't keep it in your mind, right? And you wouldn't keep it in your mind because it doesn't scare you, and then the mind sees that it's not scaring you, and it means it's not a threat, and it just lets it go. But because this thought impacts you so much, it brings it back again. And this is why people have really like only a few different types of OCD, is because like there's harm OCD, there's religious OCD, there's cheating OCD, there's just generally relationship OCD, there's cleaning OCD. You know the kinds, right? But there's only like say like I don't know, maybe 10, 15 different variations of like the most, I mean, some people have different types, right, as well, but the most common ones are, I would say harm OCD is the most common one, because at its core, most other types of OCD are the person is worried about harming somebody at the end, right? Like if I don't clean, I'm gonna harm somebody. If I don't do this the right way, I'm gonna harm somebody. You know what I mean? So it's that at its core. But anyways, but that part of the mind, the more you react to the situation, the more it believes to be real. It doesn't have the ability to figure it out. It can only see it based on what you tell it. So if you tell it that black is white, it's gonna believe that black is white. So you have to be very vigilant in how you are viewing these thoughts as they're coming in. And it has to be a pattern, because what you were doing before is you were continuously reacting with reassurance. And the more you react with reassurance, like by reassurance, it's a lot to kind of explain in one video, but you have to watch my earlier videos. But reassurance, avoidance, all of these things that you do out of fear, with high anxiety, a lot of fear, all this stuff is going to make you worse, because you're making the situation seem like it's more real to your mind, and your mind takes it to mean that you're in some sort of enormous danger and it must do everything in its power to protect you. So it's going to send you more of these thoughts. The thoughts are going to get more intense, and it's going to be even harder to dismiss them, but you have to dismiss them, even though they feel real. Every single client I've ever had has said that the thoughts feel real. They feel real for everybody. When I had OCD, they felt real. They always feel real. If they didn't feel real, if they didn't get to you, you wouldn't get OCD. For example, um, if the thought is like, oh, well, yeah, it's probably not true, you will never worry about it, you know? Or if the thought is nothing to do with stuff that you actually care about, that like something that doesn't really trigger you. For example, if you're not a religious person, you will not get a religious OCD if you're not a religious person. Because, I mean, like, why would you care if you're not religious in the first place, right? So, or for example, if you're not like really worried about cleanliness, right? And the contamination generally, it's like if it's something that doesn't trigger you just by being who you are, right? You will never get OCD about it. Do you know what I mean? So it has to be something that's already kind of like, basically OCD always goes against what you find important. So if your relationships are important to you, the most important to you, right? Then you're most likely going to get relationship OCD. If religion is most important to you, you're going to get religious OCD, and so on and so. If being a good person is important to you, then you're going to get some type of harm OCD, and that's kind of the most common. Like I said, actually, the cleaning OCD I almost never see in practice, right? Like it's always it's usually always harm OCD, to be honest with you guys. Um, so, but basically, this is how OCD works. So, whenever you're doing these actions of trying to compare one thought to another, trying to look things up online, trying to think back to the situation, if it's something to do with a false memory, or trying to figure it out if it's something to do with future, like what if in the future or something, right? So you're thinking about it like in that way. Anytime you're giving any energy towards this thought in any way, you're talking to about it with other people or whatever, anytime you're giving it energy, you are making your OCD worse, and you're ensuring that this thought will come back again. So it's like you're digging your own hole, basically. Do you know what I mean? In short, right? So you need to stop doing that. I know it's hard. I know you have a lot of feelings that feel very real, but you need to stop doing that. And it's just doing the best you can. Like, don't say, okay, in the next week I'll stop doing that, because it doesn't really work like that. In the next hour, you're not gonna take this thought seriously. You will get this thought because the brain will send it on autopilot, but you're not gonna take it seriously. Okay? And then you made it to the hour, you did good. If the thought came in, that's fine, because that's just because in the past you programmed your brain that the thought is important. But what's happening now, right? So, okay, for this hour you did well. Okay, now let's try it next hour. You're feeling good? Let's try half a day. And like this, short little wins, Think of it as being on a diet, right? Everything you put in your mouth matters if you want to lose weight, right? So same thing with this. Every time you react to the thought, it matters. It matters either way. If you react the wrong way, it matters. If you react the right way, it matters. Because every time you are faced with this thought, every time your brain sends you this thought, you are programming your brain as to how to deal with this thought. So you're telling your brain, okay, I'm going to deal with it in this way, or I'm going to deal with it in that way. And the brain takes notice. But it can't be just the one time. It has to be consistent, because before you were consistent in doing reassurance and avoidance and whatever, right? So now you have to be consistent in disregarding, and only then it will work. Do you know what I mean? All this other stuff, like people are like vitamins, medication, this is what needs to happen in order for recovery. All the other stuff will help, but this is what's going to make a difference in your recovery. And again, as you guys know, I'm not a doctor, but at the same time, the amount of people that I've helped get over OCD is, it, not to toot my own horn, but it is pretty incredible. And it makes me actually angry that doctors can't do this, because we need to educate people on what OCD is, what are common types of OCD, what they're doing wrong so they stop doing it, and what they can do right in order to recover. And then if you do this, then you recover. Then it's just, if you're doing these things and if you're following this kind of routine, then it's just a matter of time until you fully recover. But your percentage of how much you're reacting versus how much you're not reacting to the thoughts has to be high. So it has to be to do the right things has to be pretty high. So I would say you have to at least go for 80-20. So 80% you're not reacting, and 20%, well, things happen, right? You reacted. But 80% you have to keep strong and refuse any reaction, any energy towards the thought. So next question I have is, why are some days my thoughts don't bother me and some days I can't think of anything else? And this is actually a really good question. The reason why it happens is, there's many reasons. Usually it has to do with things that are happening outside of the whole OCD thing. What is happening in your life outside of OCD? Are you being stressed? Are you doing too much? Or the opposite, is there not enough going on that you have a lot of time to think and obsess over the OCD thoughts? Because usually, you want to stay busy, you want to give your mind something else to focus on. If that's not happening, it can, be easier for OCD thoughts to come in. So they'll bombard you more throughout the day. And because they'll bombard you more, it's going to be harder for you to disregard and more chance of failing that specific day. But if you have one day fail, it's not a problem. I mean, nobody's, in all the time of me talking to people, everybody has pretty much similar recovery process. Some people are faster, some people are slower, but it's never linear. Do you know what I mean? The person starts out from doing a lot of reassurance or a lot of avoidance, basically everything wrong. And then as they start to do the right things, it gets easier as they progress. And they'll have days where they fail, but they start to succeed way more than they fail, and they get better at succeeding as they progress, and as the anxiety lowers, it becomes easier. So, having a bad day, having a one-day setback is really normal. It's not a setback in terms of your whole recovery. But if you let one day turn into 2 days, turn into 3 days, then that's bad. Then that's where you have to really focus on not doing the reassurance, because then you are setting yourself back. But, you kind of have to prepare yourself that there will be days where it's not so good, and it's fine. In those days, it's just best to keep busy, because the busier you are, the less thoughts will come in. So just try to have almost like a go-to activity where, okay, today I'm not feeling so good, I'm going to go do this, this, and this. I'm going to go out with my friends. So, because what you will really want to do is stay home and analyze your OCD thought. But that's the thing that you must not do, because the more you're paying attention to it, just like I said in the first part of the show, the more you pay attention to it, the worse you will feel. And the worse you will feel tomorrow as well. Because the thoughts, they're not going to just go away overnight, right? If you make it relevant today, tomorrow it's going to be harder to dig yourself out of this hole that you kind of fell into in the last day, basically. So, but stress, nothing to do, because stress is the opposite. If your kind of adrenaline's already pumping, if your cortisol is already high, if you're drinking coffee, and if you're just, your mind is going a million miles a minute, that can trigger OCD as well. So not too far in each zone. So keeping busy, but not too busy, but also not being too free and nothing to do kind of thing. Additionally, if you were seeking, just like I said, right, if you were seeking reassurance yesterday, you will feel worse the next day. So that might be another answer of, why am I feeling bad today? Because you were probably doing something that you weren't supposed to, such as doing reassurance the other day, right? So that will trigger you the next day for sure, because it's like I said, like, you will feel it. Or the opposite of that, if you were doing everything you are supposed to, then the next day you will feel better. Do you know what I mean? So, but I mean, like not seeking reassurance, not paying attention to the thought. The first day it's going to be harder, the second day it gets better. So it really depends on what you are doing in every moment that you have this thought. So next question I have is reassurance by reading the Bible and believing that God will make my thoughts go away bad? I don't think it's bad. It's bad if you are reading the Bible specifically for reassurance purposes, or if you're doing anything specifically for reassurance purposes, because you shouldn't be doing anything because OCD is making you do it. You should do things because you want to do them. Doesn't matter what it is, In terms of only relying on an outside force to get rid of your OCD, you have to do the work. And that's what I said in the first part. If you're not going to do the work, I'm not sure, there is miraculous healings and things like that, and you can't deny that. But as far as what I can see with my clients, if you're not going to do the work, you're not going to recover. So it's very important that you do refuse the thoughts when they're coming in. You stop paying attention. You stop viewing them as valid. And I believe that if you do this, the outside forces can only help you with that, depending on your religious system and what you believe in, right? But you do have to do the work. So I have two questions from the same person, and they're kind of similar. So the first question is, how is living in the moment useful in recovery from OCD? Sometimes I just ponder over the meaning of life. I guess that is also my OCD. Is there a point in everything we are trying to achieve? Should we just let go of everything and just live in the moment? And this is the thing, is that if it's something important, say for example, you have harm OCD that's related to false memory OCD, right? Or if you have a fear of the future, right? It will manifest itself whether you pay attention to it and hyperanalyze it or not. If you've caused harm in the past, it's going to come up. You can't just get away with things, right? And most of the time, it's, the harm OCD is the most common type of OCD, right? So if it's something important, it will come up anyway. Same thing, it's, I don't want to get into reassurance territory right here, but if it's important, it will be brought to your attention anyways. So there's no point in digging and trying to figure it out. So in that way, living in the moment, focusing on the now, and if one day when you focus in the now, in that now, say, I don't know, police come on to knock on your door and say, what did you do, then you will deal with that in that now, but not right now, if that makes sense. So yes, it is important, to focus on for the present moment, because none of these thoughts ever have been real. For anybody who's ever had OCD, their thoughts have not been real. So you'll be the first one, right? So, then that's kind of what I say to everybody, because it's true, and that first one has never happened yet, So you have to take that chance that, it's not very likely that you'll be the first one, but it is very likely that you have OCD. So instead of worrying about the past or worrying about the future, just worry about the now and you'll be fine. I guarantee you will be fine if you live in the now. And then the second part of the question is, if I'm uncertain about something, like the meaning of life, for example, should I just Google the answer online? Will it be considered bad for my OCD because searching for the answer equals seeking reassurance? Some philosophy question does not have a certain answer. So this really depends. Remember how in the beginning of the show I talked about not just the thought itself, or the action itself, but what is the motivation behind it? So, for example, like how we talked about reading the Bible or praying, right? If you're reading it or praying or looking up stuff because you're interested in it, because that's what you want to do, this is what real you want to do this, then that's great. But if you're doing it with fear, right? Like you have fear that's driving this, anxiety that's driving this. You're getting more and more anxious, more and more consumed by fear as you're trying to find out the answers, then that's not good, of course. So it depends on what message you are sending as you are doing these actions. So the next question I have. So to clarify, whenever I get a fear of a past event, fear of a future event, fear of a past mistake, and so on, for example, if I get a thought that says, what if you're the evil monster? What if you tell someone about your past and they hate you? I should just say, maybe, but I'm choosing not to think about this. And yeah, exactly, because it's basically by saying maybe, you're not really saying maybe it's true, but it's like, um, you have to say something to OCD kind of in order to make it, stop bugging you, basically. It's like, if any of you guys are parents, you would know what I'm talking about. But when your child is like asking you for something trivial, like something not important, and you're like, yeah, 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 I'll get it later, or something like that. It's not that you are going to actually get it, but it's just that, you need to say something, because if you don't say something, the question will keep coming up. So if you say, yeah, yeah, I'll deal with it, it's like you're delaying the situation, basically. And you're reducing the anxiety. Yes, it is a reassurance move to do that. So it would be better to not say anything at all, and a lot of the doctors kind of disagree with me on this because they say, well, no, it's better not to address these thoughts in any way. And it's true, it is better, but we live in reality, and when OCD hits hard, it's very difficult for a person to go from complete, reaction with reassurance and everything to nothing. It's pretty much impossible in practice. In theory it's great, but in practice it's pretty much impossible. So you have to say something. So saying, yeah, maybe I'll deal with it later, basically, is, that is a good response. And the way you should say it is exactly kind of how I'm saying it now, from a position of power, not from a position of fear. Like, yes, I'm in control, I'll take care of it, rather than, oh my god, I'm so scared, and like that. You don't want to do that. You want to be calm, collected. Yes, I'm not going to take care of this right now. I'm not going to pay attention to this. Maybe it's true, but I'm choosing not to pay attention to it. Because it's never really true. It's never true. Not once. Not once has it been true. Just like I said, right? You'll be the first one, but not really, right? So it's just kind of, you're just kind of getting away from this topic, basically. So, but yeah, no, that's not bad. So this is the end of today's show. I'm sorry if I didn't get to all the questions. Whatever questions I didn't get to, I do have them. I will answer them in the next show. I'm hoping that today's overview, especially in the beginning, gives you enough to continue fighting OCD. If you need more information, you can always visit youhaveocd.com. There's a private one-on-one recovery program there with me. There's also ebooks available. There's free articles as well. So please check that out. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe, and I'll see you next Wednesday.